Here I'm going to do 4 examples on how to factor a complex trinomial. So trinomial means I have 3 terms, and complex means that my a value, which is the coefficient on the x squared, is not equal to 1. So 4x squared, 5x squared, these are complex trinomials. With any factoring question, you should first look for a common factor. Here, 4x squared, 41x, and a 10 don't have anything in common, so I can say no common factor, but always look for that before you attempt the following technique. My A is 4, my B is the 41, and my C is the 10. I'm going to multiply the A with the C. 4 times 10 is 40. And so you're going to try to think of a list of numbers that multiply to 40. I could do 1 times 40. I could do 2 times 20. I could do 5 times 8. I could do 4 times 10. And that's it. So I want to look at this list. I want to have this list in front of me in writing, so I don't have to think too hard. I want 2 numbers that will multiply. So they will multiply to the A times the C, multiply to 40, and they're going to add to the B value, which is the 41. 2 numbers that will multiply to 40 and add to 41. So those 2 numbers are 1 and 41. So here's what I do next. I'm going to think about 2 ratios. Both ratios are going to start with 4x. And I get the 4x from the 4x squared. So you have 4x here, 4x to 4x, and then you put the 2 numbers you came up with, 1 and 40. And then you're going to try to reduce these ratios if you can without creating fractions. So 4x to 1, I can't reduce it, so you keep that. But the second ratio, I can divide both of them by 4 to shrink to 1x and a 10. And these 2 final ratios are actually going to help us come up with the 2 factors. So the factored form of this trinomial is going to be 4x plus 1 from this ratio, and then x plus 10 from this ratio. This is much, much easier than something like the decomposition method that you may have learned. Unfortunately, not every teacher knows about this, but if they did, they would have taught it like this. So this is the factored form. Let's look at another example if this felt a bit overwhelming. A is 5, B is 7, and C is the negative 6. A times C, 5 times negative 6 gives me negative 30. So I want 2 numbers that will multiply to negative 30, and at the same time, they're going to add to the B value of 7. So let's make a list of ways to get to 30. Don't worry so much about the minus for now. Just make a list of numbers that multiply to 30, and we can take a look and try to make the result negative 30. At the same time, make the 2 numbers add up to 7. 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and there's 5 times 6. From this list, you can pause the video, try to come up with the numbers that will multiply to negative 30, add to 7. Okay, so if you've had some time to think, or if you just want to follow along, the 2 numbers would be 3 and 10, but to make sure that the result is sum of 7, that they add up to 7, you'd have to have negative 3 with the 10. Negative 3 plus 10 would give you 7, and negative 3 times the 10 gives you negative 30. Now let's do our ratios. Our first term is 5x squared, so we're going to start both ratios with a 5x. 5x for both ratios, again from 5x squared. And at the end of each ratio, we're going to put these 2 numbers. So negative 3 for the first, and then a 10 for the second. Now we reduce our ratios if possible, reducing them without making any fractions. 5x minus 3, nothing I could do to reduce without creating fractions. 5x to 10, yes, we can divide each of them by 5. 5x divided by 5 is just an x. 10 divided by 5 is a 2. These two ratios are going to help you with the two factors. So here are the factors. One factor is going to be 5x minus 3. And the second factor is going to be x plus 2. So the sign I put here comes from the ending of each ratio. Negative 3. Here I wrote a 2 without a minus, so it's assumed to be a plus 2. Okay, this one here, no common factor. There's no common factor between the three terms. The a value is 2. The b value is going to be 1. There's like a 1 attached to the x, and c is negative 6. I want two numbers that will multiply to the result of a times c. 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. And I want them to add to the b value, which is a 1. So it's like 1x. Again, you want to make a list of ways to get to 12. Do it on paper before you identify which two numbers they are. Your brain is going to thank you if you write it down before you think. 1 times 12, 2 times 6 can get me a 12, and 3 times 4. Think about the two numbers that will multiply to negative 12 and add to 1 from this list. If you've thought about it, those two numbers are negative 3 and 4. Okay, so now I can start making my ratios. My first term is 2x squared, so both of my ratios are going to say 2x, 2x, 2x again. And then we put these numbers at the end of the ratios. 2x negative 3 doesn't reduce anymore. 2x to 4, yes, I can divide by 2. I get x to 2. And now we have the factored form. The factors are 2x minus 3 and x plus 2. There we go. Last example. Remember to always look for a common factor before you do any other factoring technique. And this is one example where you will need to do that. 9x squared, 21x, and 6. All three of them are divisible by 3. So we common factor a 3. 3 times what gives me 9x squared? 3 times 3x squared. 3 times what gives me 21x? That would be a plus 7x. 3 times what gives you a 6? That would be a positive 2. And now we could do this whole process with this bracket here, where the a value is the 3, b is the 7, c is the 2. I highly recommend you pause the video, try to do the rest of the work on your own, and when you're done, play it, see if you got the right answer. So I'm going to multiply a with the c. That's going to give me a 6. And then the b value is the 7. Two numbers that will multiply to a 6 and at the same time add to 7. Let's see, 1 and 6, 2 and 3 are the only ways to get a 6. For them to add to a 7, I need 1 and 6. Ratios. In this bracket, after we did the common factor, we see 3x squared. So I write ratios with 3x and 3x. After the two dots, we've got 1 and a 6. Reduce if possible. First ratio doesn't reduce. Second ratio, I can divide both of them by 3 to shrink it to a ratio of x to 2. Okay, so here's our final factored form. We have the common factor of 3, and then 3x plus 1 and x plus 2. That's the factored form.